Welcome, and we are so honored to speak to all of you as part of the celebration of the 125 years of the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences. I'm Jane Sutterlin, and my colleague, Maria Wherley. Go ahead and say hi, Maria.
Hi, Maria.
We are faculty learning designers in the John A. Dutton E-education Institute, and we'll be talking to you about how you can incorporate emotion and learning science into your classroom to create an optimal learning environment for your students to learn. We also just have some practical activities that you can try out, and we suggest some technologies that you might want to use that we all have available to us. So as I was doing a little bit of research for this talk, I was going back through some kind of the history of earth and mineral sciences, because 125 years is more than all of our lifespan. It's pretty impressive. And then I was thinking about how the technology has changed from then until now. And technology is one of those things that people usually love it or hate it. I happen to be in the love it category, and I'm probably one of those early adopters, but there are people that aren't as enthusiastic, let's say. So I ran, that would be Maria. I dragged her along with me. But what I found these awesome quotes about some educators' opinions of technology through time. And I thought I'd just share them with you. Here we go. So students today, they can't prepare bark to calculate their problems. They depend on their slates, which are more expensive. What will they do when their slate is dropped and it breaks? They will be unable to write. That was in the teachers' conference in 1703. It's a little longer than 125 years ago, but still a little resistance. How about in 1815? Students today depend on paper too much. They don't know how to write on slate without chalk dust getting all over themselves. They can't clean a slate properly. And what will they do when they run out of paper? Students today depend too much upon ink. They don't know how to use a penknife to sharpen a pencil. Ink will never replace the pencil. That was 1907. And students today depend upon these expensive fountain pens. They can no longer write with a straight pen and nib, not to mention sharpening their own quills. We must not allow them to wallow in such luxury to the detriment of learning how to cope in the real business world, which is not so extravagant. 1941. That's not very long ago, really. The ballpoint pen will be the ruin of education. Students use these devices and then throw them away. The American virtues of thrift and frugality are being discarded. Business and banks will never allow such expensive luxuries. 1950. And the last one, students today depend too much on handheld calculators. Some of you might feel that's still true, but that was someone, I heard that in 1985. But I guess the moral of this story is that, as technology changes and evolves, this is a lifelong learning opportunity for us. The technology is always going to keep evolving and changing and adapting to our world environment. And I remember just the conversation about what laptops in the classroom is going to do. And we still have conversations about, do we want to allow cell phone use? Do we want to allow laptop use? This is all ever changing. But for us, especially Maria and I believe that we need to harness the technology for the learning aspect. And it's not about the technology, it's more about the learning and using that technology to supplement it. And that doesn't mean that there's one particular technology that's going to be right for everything. It's got to feel authentic to you, and you have to do what is most comfortable for you. But we do feel that technology does help students take more responsibility for their own learning, and that is something that we are really passionate about. So, let me back up just one more slide. So we're framing today's talk around what we feel are components to making a good learning environment. And these look different for every student and every faculty. And what we're talking about is taking the science of learning. There's a lot of research, brain research about how people learn, what motivates them to learn, And it's just not as easy to just take that science and apply it, and take those research studies and just put them in your classroom. You have to, as an instructor, massage what's going to be right for your environment, what you're teaching, what your students doing, and most of all, what you're comfortable with. So we're trying to take the science of learning and massaging it to what I call the art of teaching. And most of all, it just needs to be authentic for you. Okay, so we're framing this in what we call the 4 R's. And we believe, we really truly believe, that if you keep these 4 R's in mind when you teach a course, you'll create an engaging and positive learning environment where students are going to be motivated to do their best work. All right, so what are the 4 R's? The first one is relationships. So think of your favorite coach, your favorite teacher, your favorite faculty member, mentor, and what characteristics did they have? You know, them, but are they present? They cared whether you did well or not. They pushed you to get better. They were a good listener, good communicator. They were fair. They liked what you did. They cared. They were consistent. So we're going to talk more in depth about that, but that's what we mean when we're talking about relationships. How do we do that? How do we set up good relationships with our students? Relevance. Emotion science comes into play here when we talk about relevance, because emotions determine many of our motivations, our decisions, and our behaviors. You know, we do what we want to do, and students that come to us really want to know what's in it for them. You know, and so we're trying to harness that emotion, and we're trying to help students see that our material, our content, what we're trying to have them do, the activities that we want them to do, are relevant to them, and we do have their best interest at heart. We want them to learn, and we need to just remind them, this is what we're doing, and this is why. So relevance is about why. Rigor. Rigor is the actual work, or the activities, the assignments, the group projects, the assessments. What do those look like? But we need to communicate to students that learning must be effortful. You have to put effort into things that you really want to stick. And that's what the rigor is about. And then finally is reflection. And I put reflection around the other 3 because reflection can take place in any and probably in all of these different aspects. So we use reflection to improve and to grow. And this is a critical part of taking responsibility for your own learning. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Maria, and she's going to take us through relationships.
Okay, thanks, Jane. We'll talk about relationships. And I think you can go to the next slide. Yeah, how do you establish a good relationship with your class or with students? So I think we all know that common answers to this question are like talk to students before and after class, share a little bit about yourself, send out a welcoming email or an announcement, or do an icebreaker, smile a lot, right? Offer office hours. These are great ways to help people feel more comfortable. And we can do more. And let me say here that I think we all know that college reward systems, especially at big research universities, aren't really known for valuing relationships with students, right? A lot of people feel much more pressure to research and publish than they do to build good relationships with students. But making the time for these interactions is totally worth it. Thanks to research, really recent 2020 research done by Peter Felton and Leo Lambert from Elon University in North Carolina. Thanks to them, we know that the best predictors of student satisfaction in college have to do with relationships. It's not new science buildings or high quality food or beautiful dorms, it's relationships with people, and specifically with caring adults. So Jane, if you go to the next slide here. Check out that statement. One steady relationship can help a student persevere. Felton and Lambert found that students need a few things in particular. They need a relentless welcome. That's a welcome from all adults on campus, because people really need to feel that they're valued. And this is essential for persistence and academic success. Basically, people need Mike, the Penn State mailman, who you see on this slide. He's a poster child for relentless welcome. He's retired. He was a fixture at main campus post office for like 40 years. If you don't know who he is, Google him. An amazing person to help people feel comfortable. So, and that's why I put him up there. All right, so a relentless welcome, ways to make significant relationships. People need this. They need introductions. They need our help reaching out to adults, especially at first, because adults are intimidating, especially when you're a first year. And then exploration. Students need to ask big questions about the world when they're in college. They're trying to figure out their place in the big world. And so listeners are really needed. Okay, so all of this is true, but we're going to focus on the classroom, which is really where the social and the academic worlds come together, right? So I've got 3 ideas for you, but first, we're going to look at the brain science. Brain science shows us these things about people who are supported and comfortable. They learn more easily, they begin on a positive cycle of support and motivation and success. They take risks, they're happier, they get better grades. This is good stuff to know. All right, so here are my ideas for you. And you can go forward one more slide, Jane. Number 1 is learn students' names and pronouns and do introductions. Why? Okay, go look at the next slide. Here's your class roster. These are your 5 students. Chances are that you might not be too comfortable trying to say some of these names out loud. And chances are that if you butcher these names in class, you and these people and everyone else might be uncomfortable. And maybe from what we understand about brain science, these people will be less likely to perform well. It's really hard to function at your full capacity when you feel like an outsider. There's a ton of research to support this. See Claude Steele. So have some fun with this. I don't care how big your class is. You can do something. You can do this with, you can do something with the innovative technology called index cards. Okay, so if you share some pronunciation rules and hand out some cards to kids, to students, you can collect something like this. And I very purposely chose Fook Boy for this example. You can look up this young woman later if you like. There's an interesting story about her going to college and on the second day of her college career being told that her name needed to be anglicized because it was very offensive. That's exactly the kind of thing you want to avoid, right? You want to make Fook Boy feel very, very welcome. And knowing how to pronounce her name is a first step. So an easy thing to do is hand out cards and some pronunciation rules, and then collect these and keep them on hand. Great conversation starters to share at the beginning of class. You can also keep them in your office for when people come to visit you, so that you meet them with a smile and a handshake and a correct pronunciation. Taking the time to get names right really matters. It makes people feel welcome and worthy and valid. And when we don't, there's a lot of discomfort. And of course, index cards is not the only technology you can use to do something like this. Microsoft Teams is an instant messenger. You can have a chat with everyone in your class. You could use a Google Jamboard or Padlet, which is like a virtual whiteboard where people can post stickies. You can use a Canvas discussion forum or a tool called Flipgrid, which is a video platform for sharing casual video clips of people saying their names, right? Okay, so hand in hand with names and pronouns goes introductions. All you have to do is offer up a Canvas discussion board or a Microsoft Teams space, or simply some time on the first day of class with your resident students and share a bit about yourself and ask others to do the same. It's very simple. The reason to do this, again, is to build a classroom community. If you're online, you want to build your social presence. You want your students to know you're engaged. Being a part of a community and knowing that your instructor's invested are motivating factors for students. So supported students are more likely to participate, to ask questions, to come and see you when they don't understand something. They're less likely to drop your course. You could take this a step further and assign a content-related problem that might pique their interest in some upcoming material, have them introduce themselves and work together, and do this several times to allow for more interactions and introductions. You can do this on Zoom. Pretty simple. All right, remember though, that the brain science is the important stuff. There it is again. Okay, the next idea is on the next slide, to value persistence. So have high academic standards, yes, and show students who struggle that they're not doomed. Why? Because this is how you really make a difference in the lives of students. You show them that you're a partner in their learning journey and that failing an exam doesn't mean you're stupid or that you don't belong in college. Students need to know that success is this process and that you're in it together. It's not an accident that some people come upon and others don't. It's a process. It's work, right? So what can you do? Be very transparent. Make sure people know that you're here to help. Show me to care and are willing to work, and I'm here to help is your message, right? Also recognize that you've been at this for a while, but students who are new to college are in a place where you might be kind of scary for them. More students than we realize feel like imposters. And we always have to remember that some people, underrepresented people especially, may have had negative experiences in the past or elsewhere on campus. And so saying I'm available isn't really pointed enough. You need to provide help like holding office hours, but if you can, require them. Also, explain what they're for. Sometimes students think that office hours is a time for you to be in your office working, not time for them to come and interact with you. So explain it. You can set up peer mentoring from within a class. You can offer practice problems. There are technologies to help with this. There's something called H5P for making practice problems of all sorts. There's something called Mobius, which is a math tool that helps students do problems online. You can invite people to your office hours to do practice problems or hold review sessions with student-made practice problems or make videos to explain difficult concepts. And on the next slide, you'll see a photo here where a TA sat down for just 3 minutes and on one take drew some diagrams and explained a difficult concept in a class and totally clarified what was in the text. Very simple and easy and fast, but super helpful, right? So the key is help people who are willing to work, talk with them, find out what they're missing, re-explain and make connections, make the effort to meet your students where they are, look for opportunities to make students mentors and coaches and experts. Okay, the next one, my final one is make mentoring who you are. This basically means make a big effort because supported students are more ready to learn, to stay motivated, and to be successful. They don't have to be your students either, right? Sign up and help kids move into the dorms, like in our Teams program at EMS. Meet incoming first-year students and sophomores who really weren't on campus last year, and all those juniors who are coming in from Commonwealth campuses. Make an effort to find them and say hello. In EMS, we have the amazing Ryan Family Student Center where you can walk in and have conversations with kids pretty easily. You can make your office inviting, create time for mentoring conversations. When you're being a listener, take the time to introduce a student who's come to you to another adult who might help them move forward. All these things are really important, and especially during low moments in students' lives, right? And they can all be done pretty easily with basic technologies like Zoom and Canvas and email and Microsoft Teams, all familiar, all effective. Okay, so relationships, one piece of this teaching puzzle, takes effort, but worth your time. And Jane is gonna go into relevance next.
Help if I turn my microphone back on, that'd be good. So like I was saying earlier about relevance, I've been doing more and more research on emotion science, and it really answers a lot of questions for me about when I was teaching. And you would have a class and you have an activity and it would go great. And then the next year you would try it again and it would flop. And I just didn't understand what is it that motivates students and doesn't motivate other students? And it really comes out that it's about how students are feeling. It's this emotion thing. And so it's really interesting to me how if we can tap into some of these emotions, I think we'll have a better success rate at getting them to be self-motivated. Because we don't want to stand up there, and this is something that I've had people tell me, I can't be an actor, I can't go up there and do a lot of showy things. And I don't think you need to do that. And I think I've mentioned before, you just want to be your authentic self. So some people are more animated and others are not. But the bottom line is that emotions do drive our decisions and our behaviors, and they're finding out more and more that those circuits between emotions and learning are really overlapping. So if we can tap into emotions, we can harness the student attention, which will help with their working memory resources. It will enhance their long-term memory, and it definitely fuels motivation. So how do you tap into students' emotions? And really, the easiest thing to do is to just make your activities and your assignments and material relevant to students. And you may have to tell them why this is relevant to them, but if you make it relevant to them, they're going to be more interested. But I will just want to caveat this, is that emotions do definitely attract our attention, but it's limited like a spotlight. We don't see what we don't focus on. And so, you're not going to have too much luck if students come to class and they just had a big emotional breakup, or they're really worried about something. It's going to be hard maybe to break their attention away from that. But anything you can do to make what Maria was saying, was your classroom a safe environment for students to feel comfortable. Hopefully they can divert some of the attention to what it's really, working on them, and focus on your class. And like I said, you don't have to make everything like a siren is going off to grab their attention, because if you live next to a fire station, you tend to ignore those sirens in the middle of the night after a while, because you're used to hearing them. So you want them to be a little bit infrequent, but the studies have shown that you can put some not so interesting things interspersed between things that draw someone's attention, and then hold their attention. So even if you're doing a lecture and you use wording in your lessons like, oh, you'll find this interesting, or isn't this surprising, or this will be on the test. These kinds of like interspersed sayings throughout your lecture are going to grab their attention, and then they will tend to spotlight back on what you're saying after that. So how to make some other things relevant is to give guided questions for reading. So instead of just saying, hey, read chapter 5 tonight, tell them why. Why are you reading chapter 5? What should I be able to answer after reading chapter 5? What kind of things should I be looking for? Should I be comparing this to previous content that we've been looking at? Should I be looking for new concepts? Should I be seeing how this plays out in how this content relates to what we're going to talk about in class the next day? But make those things known, because they're kind of obvious to us, but definitely I have seen students that will completely focus on the wrong material, get tested on it and be totally frustrated, and feel like a failure because they actually studied or looked at the wrong content. And it's helpful too, even just to, we'll talk about this a little bit with rigor, but ask students questions about after these little readings. Make sure that they did find the relevant pieces and help them, again, help point it out to them. And you can use feedback to correct any kind of misconceptions. Once you get the feedback, you can say, okay, a lot of you paid attention to the color of how everything was working, but really what I wanted you to focus on was the mechanics of how that airplane flew, not how they painted them. So trying to talk about any kind of misconceptions or things that would come up in office hours or in a general discussion and quiz, those kinds of things. Articulate the purpose of your homework or your assignments. Sometimes I hear from students, they're like, this is so stupid what we have to do all the time. Whereas when I talk to the faculty member about it, they explain to me, oh, this is really going to help them because, we're going to be doing this kind of thing all the time in the next class, or this is what they do in industry. So you can make connections with the class in the real world, bring in guest speakers, tell them how you're going to use this, these group projects that they love so much, how that's really a valuable skill to be used in industry. You're trying to spark their curiosity and help those students become self-directed or motivated learning to ask questions and find problems and solve problems. One of the big ones that I have found in helping, point out this relevance is to give students more confidence in the material and and to remove the self-identity away from how they're feeling about the content to this is something I'm learning. And what I mean by that is if you're considered like really good at math, right? You may be apprehensive to try more complicated and fancy math problems because you're supposed to be good at it. And if you try something really hard, you might not be good at it. We want to break those barriers down and say, learning is a lifelong process. Learning is about trying and failing and figuring out. And we want people to be unafraid to fail or admit they need help understanding. And that kind of drive to rectify failure will help them construct understanding and build those that scaffolding for learning. And those are things that you want to try and build into your classroom. On this next slide here, I kind of liked this this handout a faculty member gave their students, and they were trying to help them understand just how to study, because we're finding out that students may have gotten to college without having to really study or know how to study. They were just good at paying attention in class, doing well on tests, and they didn't really have to buckle down. And so anyway, this faculty member gave out this little handout about different ways of studying. But what I like about it, it's not just about what it is, what are the types of different kinds of studying. So we have retrieval practice, space practice, and interleaving. And these are 3 effective study methods that students can do themselves, or we can incorporate in classrooms, built it into the learning. But I'm just going to take that first row. They'd say, well, what is retrieval practice versus rereading? And so talk about, okay, well, it's about self-quizzing, retrieving knowledge and skills from memory, not from your notes. So actually having to recall the information instead of just looking over it. So, well, how do I use it? Okay, so when you're reading, pause, write down the main ideas, any new terms, any relationships to things that you already know. Use those end of study chapter questions to see if you can answer them without referring to the material. Make note of the mistakes you're making. And those are the areas that you need to, bring yourself up on. So intuition, and I love this. So intuition tells us that just highlighting, underlining, and rereading is effective because it gives you that false sense of security that I know what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, this makes complete sense. And, it works really well until somebody asks you a question. But then this next column, why is this better than, intuitive methods, providing the illusion of knowing, right? So you're feeling confident. Self-quizzing is more reliable. Periodic practice strengthens learning. And then the last column about how does this supposed to feel? How does this learning process supposed to work? And it's going to be awkward and it's going to be frustrating. And that struggle is good. It means that you're challenging yourself and you're pushing yourself. Those are the kinds of things I'm not sure students hear all the time. And I just liked how they gave the relevance of why I'm telling you to do what I'm trying to do. So I think it helps with motivation. That kind of takes us right into the rigor. R is think about things that you're really good at and how did you gain that level of proficiency? So what did you do to make progress to try and get better? Most of us think, okay, if I want to get better at my golf swing, I've got to practice. I can't just play the game. Probably should go out and hit some balls and do some chipping and putting on my own. So I need to maybe break it down and work it up. And again, this goes back to relationships. If I had a great golf coach helping me do all those things and outlining some of the skill set that I need to do to build that up, that's where these R's intertwine. So the rigor is the piece of the things that you're asking students to do, right? The activities, the assignments, the group projects, the assessment, and you're telling them why you're doing these group projects, and you're telling them why they're doing these assignments, but make sure that they are relevant to your content. You're not just giving, quote, busy work, that they are meaningful and maybe not fun or maybe, hard or difficult, but they will help them in the long run. And also make sure that those activities and those practice exams and the low stakes quizzes, that they're reflective of what your final assessments are going to be. Students get really frustrated when they do a lot of practice quizzes, they feel confident with something, and then the assessment is something that they've never seen before, never practiced before. And that would be kind of like my golf analogy. I would go out and practice golf and then told, oh no, we're not going to play around a golf today. We're going to go play basketball. I would be completely in left field, throwing in baseball in there too, to accomplish those tasks. So if you want them to practice being able to apply material, give them opportunity to practice that. If it's a writing intensive course and you want them to be writing essays, build some writing samples first, give them feedback on their writing so that when they do the paper at the end of the course, that they've had some skill set and some practice, some feedback, and so that their final product is good. I could go on and on and on about different strategies and techniques about putting these kinds of things in your classroom, but I'm going to give you, at the end, we'll give you a list of resources, but I want to refer you to a website called learningscientists.org, and they really break down a lot of these learning science techniques and strategies and ways to communicate these to your students. They break it down into 6 areas of space practice, retrieval practice, elaboration, interleaving, concrete examples, and dual coding. First time I heard that, I was like, wait, what? But basically, it's just providing content in different ways and continually repeating important concepts and practicing. So for example, if you are giving lecture on content and then the very next day, when they come to class, ask them to recall from memory what they talked about, what were the most important parts from the previous day's lecture. Even better would be to have them recall how this material might relate to content they talked about 2 weeks ago. And that's where that spaced practice comes in. Maybe when you're doing quizzes, you might throw in just a group of, the Canvas has an ability to group questions, and you can put all those types of questions that you really want them to know when they're 89 years old, throw those all into a pool and pull them in into every quiz, just so they get like 3 or 4 questions from this pool of previous content, just to help them, again, bring this material to mind and allow them to maybe do a little bit of forgetting, because forgetting does help them acknowledge that they've forgotten, go back and reinforce it, and it will beat that path down in their brain to help material stick a lot better. Presenting material in different ways. So Maria showed you a sample of that video, and we were working with that TA in this written content of the course. And we were trying to go through it from clarity and from a student perspective. And both Maria and I were totally confused about that concept that he was talking about. And so we were asking about it, and he just pulled out this piece of paper and he started talking and writing. And I was like, hold on, ran and got the document camera and had him do it. And once he was able to demonstrate it and show it to us in a different way, it really helped solidify what the text was trying to say. And both, I'm not sure just having the video or just having the text was on their own was as effective as having both of them. So another interesting concept that they talk about is called interleaving. And I like this because I remember, in elementary school when we were learning addition, I loved those worksheets, right? You'd get a whole page of addition problems and I could just race through them really well. I do really well in them. And then the next week we'd learn subtraction and I'd race through all of those worksheets. But then when it came time where they would mix them all up, well, then I didn't do as well because I would miss the fact that, oh, this is a page that's combined both addition and subtraction, and I would just apply adding to them. And I think sometimes that's what students do. They don't actually stop and think and have to critically look at the problem. And when you interleave some of these concepts between concepts, if I had done both addition and subtraction at the same time, I would have had to stop, look at the problem, see what I'm supposed to do, and then move on and not just, rote go through my steps. So I think these are just some kinds of things that they talk about. They have an awesome blog and talk about the current research and how it's applied in classroom, but they're cognitive scientists and they really try to blend what the research is saying and what you can try in your classroom. So anyway, bottom line, learning has to be effortful in order to be durable. And we want students to feel good and feel more comfortable and less frustrated, and they'll be more open to learn. All right, and I think I do have a little bit of time. This is a little bit of a side note, but this has been a project that I've been working on with some folks from the accessibility team. And one of the limitations in Canvas is when I'm trying to put content in Canvas and I want to do some of these things, I want to pull out some relevant pieces, or I want to make it known that these aspects of these content is a little bit more important, or make it easy for students to navigate. We do hear that students complain going from course to course and college to college that navigating Canvas is difficult because people set it up differently. They have things in different areas. And I'm not really opposed to having things in different areas, but if it's difficult for students to find or figure out what they're supposed to do, they're going to spend a lot of their cognitive load managing and trying to find things. By the time they find what they're supposed to do, they are not as motivated to do it. So think about like walking into a store that is just beautifully laid out and how positive you feel when you walk in, how things are simple to find, how it's organized. My mother loves grocery stores and she loves new grocery stores, but I mean, they're organized. When you walk into a grocery store, okay, all the produce and the dairy and meats are typically going to be on the outsides and other stuff is going to be in the middle, right? So having, kind of a general idea of what the course is going to look like, and then being able to look at signage and know that dairy means I'm going to be able to find milk over there, those kinds of things. Anyway, back to what I was saying is that Canvas can kind of make this a little difficult to make things look the way you want to look. And we have been working on a resource called Canvas Styles. So if you go to your Canvas dashboard, and typically when you go to the dashboard, you'll see all of your little cards for your Canvas courses. And that is what is over here on the Canvas tab. If you click over to the resources tab, there's a whole bunch of good resources in there, but we were able to put our Canvas Styles resource there. And you can click on it, and this is the front page. And this is just a resource to help you format text the way you want to, and then be able to highlight things, to show them the relevance, maybe all the readings you want to highlight, or a specific quote or things. So anyway, the next page here I have just some examples of that I pulled out of things that you can find in here. So in the upper right hand corner, I have just it's an assignment, and there's a bunch of steps to it, and we just wanted to format it in a way to highlight that there are multiple steps. And we, could use just bold print, but this really helped make it pop. Tables are especially challenging in Canvas, and headings. So this is just an example of how I was able to put some headings in and do a table that actually looked useful. No, but I was able to format it the way I wanted to. Up in the upper left-hand corner here, there's these little, what I call a toggler or a drop down, so that I can click on that little triangle and it will drop down text. So in this example, I'm using it for a transcript for a video lecture. We had a guest lecturer come in and give some authentic relevance to the course. And I used it for the transcript so people didn't have to scroll all the way through the transcript. But you could use it for a practice problem. Maybe you could put some content in there, ask them a question, and then when you click on it, it would reveal the answer or what you were hoping that they would get out of the activity. And then this lower left-hand sample is just pulling out different quotes to make it pop for students. Again, it's just a way of reducing the cognitive load on students when they go into your course, to find the material, to feel good about it. Because as I said, students that feel good about themselves and the content are going to be more motivated to work through the material. All right, the last R, I'm going to turn this back over to Maria for reflection.
Oop, I need to unmute, sorry. Okay, let's talk about reflection and specifically about metacognition and self-regulation. So you can move on to that next slide. Okay, we can't stress enough how important metacognition and reflection, is. But first, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So you're going to see 3 statements on the next slide, and I want you to raise your hand, or tell me by raising your hand which you think are metacognitive and which are not, but we'll take one at a time, right? So first one, what was the most difficult thing for you to grasp when learning about the proximate causes of climate change? Is this a metacognitive statement or not? If you think it is, put your hand up. Okay, a little split there, it looks like. Some people think so, some people either aren't answering or don't think so. Okay, how about the second one? Reflect on how increasing awareness and transparency of uncertainties in geovisual analytics could build or erode user trust. What do you think? Is that metacognitive? If you think it is, raise your hand. Split again. Okay. All right. Okay, look at number 3, C. Explain your process for calculating power flows on a simple 2-node network. Mark the steps where someone might make mistakes. There might be a little more consensus on that one, that it's metacognitive. Okay, so the answer is that number 1 and number 3, or A and C, sorry, A and 3 are metacognitive. Why? Because they're focused on thinking about learning or awareness of mental processes. That's what metacognition is. I like the definition, thinking about your own learning. So you see in A, we're asking about the most difficult thing for you to grasp. That's thinking about your own learning. And in C, mark the steps where someone might make mistakes. Those are your cues there. Okay, so yeah, sorry, I'm okay. So thinking about your own learning is how we're defining metacognition. And I want to shout out, there it is. Okay, thinking about your own learning. I want to shout out to Kathy Box at Lubbock Christian University, because she brought me to that definition. I like it better than thinking about thinking, which is what we often hear as the definition for metacognition. Thinking about your own learning is a little more straightforward, easy to grasp. Okay, also, this slide has an important statement. Metacognition is a self-regulated learning behavior. It's just like time management, or like asking for help, or like perseverance. It's something you learn to do for yourself. And that's why I think this work on reflection is where true teachers really rise to the fore, right? A lot of people can present material and assign work and collect it and hand out grades, but true teachers are really interested in helping students learn and helping students gain control over their own learning. Teaching metacognition is really important, and especially these days. Think about the current and the future makeup of student bodies in higher ed. We're seeing a less homogeneous group, right? More diversity, more socioeconomic breadth, more first generation students, a large number of people who haven't had equitable learning opportunities. Plus, our K-12 system in general doesn't really teach critical thinking. So taking some time to help students gain control of their own learning and their understanding of learning is really important. When people feel in control, they're motivated to learn. And metacognition is linked to all of the things on the next slide. There we go. Success and persistence, higher GPAs, higher retention rates, lower instances of Ds and Fs. All right, one more piece of information related to metacognition is on the next slide, and that is that students are poor at judging what they do and don't know. They're generally overconfident, and that really shows up when they don't do well on assessments. So what can you do? Putting metacognition and self-regulation to work is really about partnering with students to analyze their work and their learning. And you can do this to varying degrees. Also, whatever you decide to do is going to depend on what you teach, right? A writing course requires a different kind of plan than a math course might. So here's one idea. Give students a chance to think about where they stand with exit tickets. You may be familiar with this kind of activity. It's a safe way for students to think about their learning and do some analysis. And basically, they let you know what they don't understand. So the muddiest point idea is that you hand out slips of paper at the end of class or conduct a survey in Canvas. Ask people what they don't understand. You do it anonymously, no need to grade anything. You just collect their thoughts and address their questions at the start of the next class meeting. This can be done with actual slips of paper or a Google Jamboard where students post virtual post-it notes, or with a Canvas survey, quick and easy. If you find that something's unclear to a lot of your students, you might understand that your presentation needs some work. So maybe you reteach or offer resources or have a student who does understand explain to others. If you've set up a peer mentoring system, these sorts of activities can be really helpful for like identifying information that students are struggling with. Yeah, and then if you go to there's just an example of an exit slip, right? There's a student in MATC 201 who says, here's what I'm struggling with. You just collect it. That's all I'm talking about. Another idea is a 3-2-1 reflection. It's another kind of exit slip where students list 3 new things they learned, 2 things they're still struggling with, 1 thing that'll help them for the next class. Here you're just giving them a chance to reflect, and you can make this even more effective by pairing students up to discuss. Peer mentoring can happen there. Also, it's worth mentioning that study shows that students who go through this process, even without your feedback, just the process of reflecting and writing down what they're dealing with, helps them to do better. It's crazy. All right, number 2, self-assessment and goal setting. This can happen by unit or assignment. And here you have students list strengths in relation to content, what they think they need to know, how they're going to study, a high priority for what they need to learn. And then this is the key, you teach them some strategies. You go back to what Jane talked about. You teach them retrieval practice and concept mapping and spaced practice, anything to keep them from that trap of rereading and highlighting, which are largely ineffective and largely done incorrectly. You give them some control. And so, yeah, you give them some tools and you say, here you go, here's the deal. It's up to you to put it into work. So this post-test analysis here is one thing you can do, especially if you're offering low stakes quizzes at regular intervals. This kind of thing you hand out with the test, and you say, as you take the test, mark each question. Are you confident in your answer or are you unsure? And then after the test comes back and the grades are in, students look at what they've done, what they got right and wrong, decide if they made silly mistakes or if they really have some gaps. And then they figure out what they need to do next, right? That's all it is. It's just thinking about the learning. The next slide shows a similar thing. This is an assignment wrapper. This is one I created for a writing class to help students think about how much time they spent on the whole process of writing this essay, where they put the time in, where they might not have, and to spend time comparing the feedback to how they thought they did. And then look at the bottom. This is key. This is where you, the connection to you is. What will you do differently next time? Name some things. Do you have the information necessary to meet the goals you set? What else do you need? What can I do to help? It's that joint learning journey that's important, and all the reflection. Okay, last idea is show students what quality looks like. And all this means is show them an exemplary paper or a lab report or a capstone project or whatever, and one that's kind of middle of the road, and work together to rip them apart and evaluate them. What does quality look like? What does middle of the road quality look like? Maybe use those artifacts to build a rubric together, get students ideas. You can expand upon this in a million ways. We can help with that if anyone's interested. That's just one thing. So those are just some ideas about reflection for you. And I think the next slide goes back to our big recap, right?
Right. And we're just want to just bring this all back together in our 4 R's to just create that optical environment for students to do their best work. We really think if you take the time to look at your curriculum, your course, the activities that you're doing, how you're communicating with your students, how you're being available to them, you will note that, they will all fit into these. Oh, I'm doing this to help with relationships with my students. I'm creating a safe environment for them to feel motivated to learn. I'm showing them the relevance of what my content can do for them and how this is important and why I am passionate about my research or my content or the content of this course and why this course is important for them. And then the rigor, giving them good opportunities to learn, meaningful ways for them to learn and really challenge themselves with the content, and then reflect upon that, helping students acknowledge that they are in control of their own learning and they need to take responsibility for their learning, and that they have a lot of control over how they do in class. And it's not just somebody else's fault or somebody else's or the test's fault or whatever, why they're not learning. It's, things that they might be doing and changing and actually reflecting upon that. If they don't do well, okay, what do I need to change instead of, oh, I just need to do more of that. But anyway, so this is just a big picture. Maria and I, again, work for the Dutton E-education Institute. And if you work in the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences and you want to talk about any of the stuff that we have talked about, would be more than happy to talk to you about this. We threw out a whole bunch of technology suggestions to you. We didn't really go into how to use them. I am going to paste in the chat right now, if I can multitask at the same time, where my little chat window come up, and make sure I get it to everyone. It's just some resources for you. So the first one I have is the learningscientist.org. Again, I mentioned that they are just a really good starting point if this kind of thing is all new to you. They direct that from a student perspective, even a parent's perspective. If you have children in the K-12 environment, you might really enjoy this to help support your students. And they also have it from a teacher or faculty perspective, and they range from K through higher ed. They have a blog, they have resources that you can give to your students. They have videos that explain this way better than than I did in my little 5 minutes that I had to talk to you about it. Anyway, I highly recommend that website, clearly. Here at Penn State, if you're not in the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences and you want to talk to someone like us as a learning designer, there are faculty consultations that you can sign up through TLT. They do a phenomenal job of working with faculty everywhere throughout all the Commonwealth campuses and here at University Park. There's also links to the ITLD tech training. So they have both live and recordings that you can watch, and they're also phenomenal about learning how to use the tools that we have available to us at Penn State, and they're awesome. The OL courses are online courses through World Campus for faculty development. They're amazing as well, but they are more geared toward online learning, I would say. But a lot of the concepts, I mean, teaching is teaching. So you can gain a lot of good concepts on how to, again, develop all of these kinds of concepts that we talked about today. And then last but not least is Schreier's, and they also are awesome for consulting, and they really do value student learning like we do, and they are motivated to help faculty in their classrooms. They have all sorts of awesome workshops and bringing guest speakers, and they will also consult with you. So we have left just a couple minutes here for any questions. And I'll put my contact information, our contact information up here at the end. If you want to reach out to us about anything that we talked about, anything that we could clarify, or any of the tools, feel free. But yeah, if you have any questions, we could even promote you to turn on your microphone if you want to raise your hand, or you could put them in the Q&A. But otherwise, we're just so appreciative that everybody took the time in the middle of the summer to come and listen to us and hear just how excited we are about student learning.
That was awesome, Jane and Maria. I'm not seeing any more questions in the Q&A or the chat, but yes, everyone, please, if you have questions now or later, reach out. This was great, and I know you got some private comments that everyone might not have seen about how helpful. Where will this presentation be available, Jane, with the recording?
I believe that Patty Craig in the Earth and Mineral Sciences, if you Google 125 years Earth and Mineral Sciences, there have, because this is part of a webinar seminar series, she has posted all of the previous recordings for this seminar series in there. And I know that, but if you want to email me personally, because you're interested in the recording, once it's posted, I could send you a link as well.
And I am trying to madly find it right now. I found it, but it's not pasting nicely. Hold on. There we go. All right, there's the website to look for this as soon as it's added to that resource.
Great. And if you folks are doing any research or have any more opportunities and ideas for us to share, we'd love to hear from you as well. So we are about a learning community, and I love learning from our peers as well.
Me too. I'm realizing how invisible I am here, because when I don't speak, you don't see me, right? Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming.